After my divorce, I got half my fortune back in to celebrate. I threw myself a lavish birthday party. It was supposed to be a fresh start, a night of laughter and champagne. But instead, I ended up watching my daughter-in-law collapse on my marble floor after she slipped something into what she thought was my drink. When she turned her back, I quietly switched our glasses. 5 minutes later, she began to convulse. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and don't forget to like and subscribe. But first, let me rewind and tell you how a perfectly civilized birthday party turned into something straight out of a crime thriller 6 months earlier. When I finally divorced Robert after 28 long years of marriage, I thought the hardest part of my life was behind me. Shows you how naive a 58-year-old woman can still be, even one who's lived through her fair share of heartbreak. The settlement was fair enough. I kept the Malibu house, half the investment portfolio, and most importantly, my sanity. Robert got the other half, his precious yacht, and whatever dignity he had left after I caught him yet again with his secretary. The third time, to be exact. But who's counting? My son Marcus had taken the divorce harder than I expected. "Mom, couldn't you have worked things out?" he'd asked during one of our painfully awkward coffee meetups. He still believed in the image of his father, the charming, successful man Robert pretended to be in public. He didn't see the cheating, self-absorbed narcissist I'd been married to for nearly 3 decades. Marcus had married Sophia 2 years earlier. I'd done my best to welcome her into the family. She was young, 28 to his 35, with that glossy blonde hair and a smile so polished it could have won a pageant. A beautiful girl, no doubt, but there was something unsettling about the way she observed people, always calculating like a cat watching a mouse. Still, I told myself to ignore it. She made Marcus happy, and after everything we'd been through, happiness felt worth holding onto. That brings me to last Tuesday night, my 58th birthday. I decided to throw a proper celebration. No quiet dinner, no pity party. I wanted a real event: champagne, catered food, and enough flowers to make the place smell like a garden in full bloom. If I was beginning a new chapter, I was going to do it in style. The guest list was small but meaningful: my best friend Jennifer, a few close neighbors, my brother Tom and his wife, Marcus and Sophia, even my ex-sister-in-law. Robert, thankfully, was not invited. Some wounds take longer than 6 months to heal. The night was perfect. The caterers were flawless, the champagne flowed, and for the first time in months, I actually felt good, confident, free. I wore a sleek black dress, the one Robert always said made me look washed out. Turns out, he was wrong about that. To dot around 9, I stepped out onto the terrace for some air. The Malibu night was beautiful, waves crashing softly below, stars scattered across the sky. From inside, I could still hear laughter, the gentle clinking of glasses, the soft hum of conversation. It felt like peace, finally. But when I walked back inside, that peace shattered. Sophia was by the bar, standing near the spot where I'd left my champagne glass. Nothing strange about that, she'd been helping serve drinks all night. But something in her body language froze me. She was angled slightly away from the room, shielding whatever she was doing. I paused in the doorway, watching. She glanced around, quick and cautious, then dropped something small into my glass. It dissolved instantly, leaving nothing behind but the faintest shimmer for a few seconds. I stood there, my mind refusing to believe what my eyes had just seen. Surely, I was mistaken. My daughter-in-law couldn't do something like that. But deep down, my instinct screamed otherwise. My pulse raced, my throat went dry. Then she turned, smiling that flawless, practiced smile, picked up the glass, and walked toward me. "Diana, there you are," she said sweetly. "I was just bringing you your drink." I smiled back at Sophia, matching her sweet, innocent expression with one of my own. "How thoughtful of you, sweetheart," I said as she handed me the glass. I took it with steady hands and thanked her, but instead of drinking, I waited. When she turned away to greet Jennifer, who was walking over, laughing about another one of her online dating disasters, I made my move. Smoothly, casually, I switched our glasses. Sophia's was sitting on the side table, identical to mine except for whatever she'd just slipped into it. The switch took maybe 3 seconds, simple, clean, completely unnoticed. 5 minutes later, as Jennifer was describing her date's bizarre obsession with his mother, Sophia suddenly grabbed the back of a chair. Her face had gone pale and she was blinking rapidly. "Sophia?" Marcus was beside her instantly. "Are you okay?" "I feel a little dizzy," she said. But something about her voice was off, thick, slurred. Then her legs gave out. She hit the marble floor hard, her body jerking violently in convulsions that froze everyone in the room. That's when I realized my sweet daughter-in-law had just tried to poison me. While everyone else screamed and called 911, my mind went into overdrive. Within minutes, the ambulance arrived, one of the perks of living in an affluent neighborhood. The paramedics took one look at Sophia's condition and immediately suspected poisoning. What did she eat or drink tonight? One of them asked Marcus, who was pale as a ghost and clutching her limp hand. Just champagne and appetizers, he stammered. Same as everyone else, but it hadn't been the same as everyone else, had it? I said nothing, simply watching as they loaded my unconscious daughter-in-law into the ambulance. Marcus climbed in beside her, his eyes wide and worried. I'm sorry, Mom, I have to go, he said. Of course you do, I told him calmly. Keep me posted. After they left, I ushered the remaining guests out with promises to update them as soon as I knew more. Jennifer, of course, lingered. She always did. That was terrifying, she said, helping me collect the half-empty glasses. What do you think happened? Food poisoning, maybe? Could be, I suggested, though we both knew that didn't explain the convulsions. Jennifer paused, holding Sophia's glass, the one that had originally been meant for me. Diana, this might sound crazy, but did you notice anything strange about Sophia tonight? I met her eyes. Jennifer had been my best friend since college. She knew when I was hiding something. What kind of strange? I asked carefully. I don't know, she said slowly. She just seemed nervous. Jumpier than usual. And she was watching you. A lot, was she? I tried to sound surprised, but inside, my thoughts were spinning. If Jennifer had noticed something, then maybe I wasn't imagining it after all. We finished tidying up in silence, though I could feel her worried glances as she gathered her things. When she finally left, the house felt oppressively quiet. I sat down in the living room, staring at the spot on the floor where Sophia had collapsed. The smart thing to do would have been to call the police right then and tell them exactly what I'd seen. But what had I actually seen? A young woman dropped something in my drink. It could have been sugar, aspirin, anything harmless. Yes, she'd collapsed right after, but maybe that was coincidence. Except my gut told me it wasn't. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Marcus, doctors say she was definitely poisoned. They're running tests to figure out what kind. Police want to interview everyone who was at the party. Poison. So I hadn't imagined it. I typed back, how horrible. Is she going to be okay? Marcus, they think so. She's conscious now but doesn't remember much from tonight. How convenient, I thought. Another text followed almost immediately. Marcus, Mom, the police want to talk to you tomorrow morning. Detective Williams. I told them you'd cooperate fully, of course, I replied. Whatever they need. But after hitting send, I sat back and really thought about what was happening. If Sophia had tried to poison me, she wouldn't stop just because the first attempt failed. She'd try again, smarter, quieter, deadlier. And now she knew I might be suspicious. After all, I was the one standing closest when she went down. The real question was why? Why would my daughter-in-law want me dead? I stood up, walked to my home office, and pulled out my financial records. Robert and I had split everything 50-50, but half of our assets still amounted to a considerable fortune. And if something ever happened to me, my will clearly stated that everything would go to Marcus. If something happened to him, it would all go to his wife. Surely that was too far-fetched, right? No one would go that far, commit murder for money they might someday inherit. Except people had done it before. Many times. I spent the next hour scrolling through old photos on my phone, pictures from Marcus and Sophia's wedding, family holidays, birthday dinners. In every photo, she was smiling, that same flawless smile. The picture of the perfect wife and daughter-in-law. But now that I knew what to look for, I saw something else in her eyes. A sharpness, calculation, coldness. Around 2 in the morning, I finally went to bed. But sleep wouldn't come. Every small sound made me jump. What if she came back? What if tonight had just been the first step in something bigger? The next morning, Detective Williams arrived right on time. He was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense way about him. Mrs. Morrison, he began gently. I know this must be traumatic for your family, but we need to figure out how your daughter-in-law ingested what appears to be a significant amount of antifreeze. Antifreeze. My blood ran cold. That wasn't something you accidentally consumed, antifreeze? I repeated, my voice barely steady. Are you sure? The hospital confirmed it, he said. The question is how it got into her system. We're testing everything from the party food, drinks, even the flowers, in case it was an allergic reaction. I took a deep breath. It was time to make a decision, one that would change everything. Detective Williams, I said slowly. There's something I need to tell you. He set down his coffee cup and leaned forward, eyes sharp now, as I told him exactly what I'd seen Sophia standing by the bar, dropping something into my champagne, the way she'd shielded her movements, and how I'd switched the glasses when she wasn't looking. You're certain about what you saw? He asked carefully. Absolutely certain, I said. Then I walked him through it step by step. Sophia's furtive glances, The angle of her body, the shimmer on the surface of the drink, and how she handed me the glass she thought was mine. Detective Williams was silent for a long moment. Processing, Mrs. Morrison, he said finally, if what you're telling me is accurate. Your daughter-in-law attempted to murder you. Hearing the words out loud made my chest tighten. That's what I'm afraid of, I whispered. The question is why? He asked, do you have any idea what her motive might be? I gestured to the pile of financial documents spread across the coffee table. Money, I assume. My divorce settlement was substantial. He looked over the papers with a practiced eye. This is significant wealth, he said quietly. Who inherits if something happens to you? Marcus, I said. And if something happened to both of us? I let the rest hang in the air, his expression darkened. His wife would inherit everything. Detective Williams made a note in his pad. Mrs. Morrison, I need to ask you something and I want you to think carefully before answering. Has your relationship with Sophia been strained recently? Any arguments, disagreements, anything that could have triggered this? I thought about it. Nothing dramatic. We've always been polite, but not close. She's quite a bit younger than Marcus, and sometimes I got the feeling she found family gatherings tedious. He nodded. What about your ex-husband? How does Sophia get along with him? Something cold twisted in my stomach. I'm not sure, I admitted. Robert and I don't exactly compare notes these days. Why, just trying to understand the family dynamics, he said. Though his expression told me there was more behind that question than he was letting on. After he left, promising to stay in touch. Soon I found myself pacing through the house like a caged animal. The walls that had felt like a sanctuary just yesterday now felt like a target. If Sophia had tried once, she'd try again, and next time, she might not make the mistake of letting me see her do it. I picked up my phone and called Jennifer. Can you come over? I need to talk to someone I trust. She arrived within an hour, took one look at my face, and went straight to the kitchen to make tea. That was Jennifer, calm, practical, the kind of person who didn't panic in a crisis. It's one of the many reasons we've been friends for 35 years. Tell me everything, she said, settling into the chair across from me. So I did. I told her about the poisoning, my conversation with Detective Williams, and my growing suspicion that Sophia, my daughter-in-law, had tried to kill me for money. Jennifer listened without interrupting, her expression growing more troubled with each detail. Diana, she said finally, you need to be very careful. If you're right about this, you're dealing with someone who's already tried to commit murder once. She's not just going to give up and move to another state. I know, I said, rubbing my temples. But what am I supposed to do? Hide in my house for the rest of my life? No, Jennifer said firmly. But you need to be smart. First, we make sure you're safe. Then, we figure out how to prove what she did. The detective believes me, or at least I think he does, I said. But believing and proving are two very different things. Jennifer was quiet for a moment, thinking. What do you actually know about Sophia? I mean, really know. Not just what she's told the family. That was an excellent question. She grew up in Ohio, went to college somewhere in the Midwest, met Marcus at a conference in Chicago, I said slowly. He was smitten right away. Jennifer frowned. That's pretty vague information for someone who's been part of your family for 2 years. She was right. I realized with a chill that I knew almost nothing about Sophia's past, her family, her upbringing, her life before Marcus. Every time someone had asked about her background, she'd smile, change the subject, or redirect the conversation. I think, I said quietly. It's time I did some research on my daughter-in-law. We spent the rest of the afternoon huddled around my computer, digging into everything we could find about Sophia Morrison Nee Williams. Her social media presence was practically non-existent, a few polished photos, no posts older than 3 years. Her college records were incomplete, and her employment history before meeting Marcus was spotty at best. This is weird, Jennifer said, squinting at the screen. It's like she barely existed before she met your son, or like she's hiding who she really is. I murmured. Around 5 o'clock, my phone rang. Marcus, Mom, how are you holding up? He asked. I know this whole thing must be upsetting. I'm fine, sweetheart. How's Sophia feeling? Better. The doctors say she should make a full recovery. But Mom, his voice dropped. They're asking a lot of questions about the party, who had access to the drinks, who might have wanted to hurt her. It's starting to feel like they think someone deliberately poisoned my wife. I chose my words carefully. Well, the detective I spoke with seemed very thorough. I'm sure they'll figure out what happened. The thing is, Marcus continued, Sophia keeps saying she feels like she's forgetting something important about that night. She remembers most of the evening, but there's this gap right before she got sick. How convenient. I thought. The one part of the night she couldn't remember was the part where she tried to murder me. Memory loss can be a side effect of trauma, I said evenly. I guess, Marcus sighed. Anyway, We're going to stay at her sister's place in Santa Barbara for a few days while she recovers. I just wanted you to know we won't be around, of course, I said softly after he hung up. Jennifer raised her eyebrows. She has a sister in Santa Barbara? That's the first I've heard of any family. Me too, I said. And isn't it interesting that she's suddenly remembering family right when she needs an alibi? Before I could say more, my phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. We need to talk. Meet me at Cafe Luna tomorrow at 2 p.m. Come alone. A friend who knows the truth about Sophia. Jennifer and I stared at the screen. Are you going to go? She asked. I didn't even hesitate. I was already reaching for my car keys. Cafe a cute Luna was a small, trendy spot in Beverly Hills I'd never visited before, the kind of place where people discussed business deals over overpriced lattes and kale salads. I arrived 15 minutes early and chose a corner table with a clear view of the entrance. My pulse quickening for the first time in my life. I felt like I'd stepped into the middle of a spy movie. At exactly 2 p.m. a woman walked up to my table. She looked to be in her early 30s, dark hair, anxious eyes that flicked toward the door every few seconds. Mrs. Morrison? She asked quietly. I'm Carmen Rodriguez. Thank you for meeting me. I gestured for her to sit. You said you know something about Sophia. Carmen glanced around the cafe before leaning in closer. I worked with her in Chicago before she met your son. But back then, she went by a different name, Sophie Watson. My blood went cold. A different name, she was. How do I put this delicately? Carmen hesitated. She specialized in meeting wealthy men. Older men. Men who were lonely, recently divorced, or unhappily married. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. You're saying she's some kind of con artist? I'm saying, Carmen replied. She's very good at identifying targets and making them fall in love with her. Your son isn't the first, Mrs. Morrison. There were at least 3 others that I know of. What happened to them? I asked, my voice barely steady. Carmen's expression darkened. 2 of them died in accidents within a year of marrying her. Car crashes. The 3rd one, he disappeared entirely. The police investigated, but they never found enough evidence to charge anyone. The cafe suddenly felt suffocating. Why are you telling me this? Why now? Because I saw the news story about her being poisoned at your birthday party, Carmen said. Sophia doesn't get poisoned, Mrs. Morrison. She's the one who does the poisoning. I thought about the antifreeze in Sophia's system. The convulsions on my marble floor. You think she made a mistake? I asked. I think someone finally outsmarted her, Carmen said, meeting my eyes. The question is whether that someone was you. I didn't confirm or deny anything, but Carmen seemed to understand my silence. If you did switch those glasses, she said quietly, you saved your life. But you've also put yourself in tremendous danger. Sophia doesn't like losing. And she definitely doesn't like being outmaneuvered. She reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. These are copies of police reports from Chicago and Denver. The men I mentioned, I kept these as insurance. I opened the envelope and stared at the contents: newspaper clippings, police reports, photographs. 3 different men, all wealthy, all middle-aged, all dead within months of marrying a young blonde woman who looked disturbingly like my daughter-in-law. This can't be legal evidence, I said. Scanning the documents, it's not enough to convict her, Carmen admitted. But it's enough to establish a pattern. Take it to your detective friend. Let him decide how to use it. Carmen stood to leave, then hesitated. There's one more thing you should know. In Chicago, Sophia had a partner, someone who helped her find targets and stage the accidents. My pulse quickened. Who? An older man, she said. Distinguished, wealthy, very charming. Someone who could move in the same circles as her marks and vouch for her when she needed references. My mouth went dry. Do you have a name? She nodded. Robert Morrison. The words hit me like a physical blow. My ex-husband. The man I'd been married to for 28 years. The father of my son. That's impossible, I whispered. Is it? Carmen asked softly. Think about it. How did Sophia and Marcus really meet? Who introduced them? And why was your ex-husband so quick to accept a daughter-in-law he barely knew? But I was already thinking about it, and the pieces were snapping together in the worst possible way. Robert had been unusually supportive of Marcus's engagement from day one. He'd insisted on paying for the wedding, welcomed Sophia with open arms, and during our divorce, he'd been uncharacteristically generous with the settlement. I'd thought it was guilt over his affairs. But what if it wasn't guilt at all? What if he knew that my half of the money would end up back in his hands through her? Carmen watched my face carefully. You're starting to see it, aren't you? She said softly. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment attempt at murder. Mrs. Morrison, this was a long-term plan. Sophia marries your son, gains access to the family, and waits for the perfect opportunity, Carmen said. When you and your husband divorced, it created the ideal setup, but Marcus, I began, your son. She interrupted gently, is collateral damage. Once you're dead and the money is secured, Marcus will probably have an accident too. Or maybe just a sudden heart attack. Sophia is quite versatile with her methods. I stared down at the photographs inside the envelope, 3 smiling men. Now dead, each of them victims of trusting the wrong woman. Why are you helping me? I asked quietly. Carmen hesitated before answering. Because one of those men was my brother, David Watson. He was lonely after his divorce. Thought he'd found love with a beautiful young woman named Sophie. 3 months after the wedding, his car went off a cliff in Colorado. My throat tightened. Carmen gathered her purse and stood up. Be careful, Mrs. Morrison, and be smart. They've been planning this for 2 years. You're going to need more than luck to survive what's coming. After she left, I sat alone in the cafe for almost an hour, staring at the evidence scattered across the table. My ex-husband and my daughter-in-law were working together to kill me. My son was married to a murderer and he had no idea. The worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was realizing that my entire marriage had been a lie. Robert hadn't just been cheating with secretaries and golf course bartenders. He'd been planning my death. I called Detective Williams from the parking lot. I have new information, I told him. And you're not going to believe it. A few hours later, I was sitting across from him in his office at the Beverly Hills Police Department. The fluorescent lights hummed above us, making my headache worse. Detective Williams flipped through the documents Carmen had given me, his expression growing darker with each page. This is substantial, he said finally. If even half of this checks out, we're dealing with an organized criminal operation, not just a domestic dispute. You believe her? I asked. The police reports are real, he said, nodding. I can verify those. And the pattern is unmistakable. He spread 3 photographs across his desk, 3 dead men. All wealthy, all recently divorced or widowed. All married to young blonde women who vanished shortly after their deaths. I looked at their faces, Carmen's brother among them, and swallowed hard. And do you think Robert's been involved in all this? It would explain a lot, he said. Your ex-husband's role would be to provide legitimate social connections, character references. Who's going to question a young woman's background when her father-in-law vouches for her? He's not her father-in-law, I started, then stopped cold. Oh my God, you think Robert and Sophia are personally involved? Detective Williams didn't answer right away. It would fit the pattern, he said carefully. In other cases, her partner wasn't just a business accomplice, he was someone she manipulated emotionally as well. I felt sick. Not only because of what it meant for my safety, but because it forced me to confront a horrifying truth about my marriage. How long had Robert been planning this? Was he involved with Sophia before she met Marcus? Or had the affair begun after the wedding? Mrs. Morrison, the detective said gently, I need to ask something difficult. Looking back on your marriage, were there ever signs that your husband might have been involved in questionable activities? I took a shaky breath. He traveled a lot. Business trips, conferences, client meetings. I never questioned it because I trusted him completely. He said it was all for business development, meeting potential clients. What kind of business was he in again? Williams asked. Financial consulting. Investment management. He worked with people who'd suddenly come into money, lottery winners, inheritance recipients, recent divorcees. The detective jotted that down, his eyes narrowing. So, he had legitimate reasons to approach wealthy individuals who were emotionally vulnerable or isolate. Ed. Yes, I said slowly. Then I remembered something I'd brushed off at the time. A few years ago, I got a call from a woman in Phoenix. She was crying. Said Robert had managed her divorce settlement and she'd lost everything in bad investments. She wanted to know how to reach him. He'd stopped returning her calls. What did you tell her? He asked. I gave her his office number. Thought it was strange. But Robert told me she was confused about the timeline, that she'd made risky investments. Against his advice, the memory hit me hard. My stomach turned. I felt truly nauseated. She probably wasn't confused at all, was she? Probably not, Detective Williams said. Just then, my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Hey, Mom, how are you feeling? Sophia's been asking about you. She feels terrible about ruining your birthday party. I handed the phone to the detective. What do I say to that? Act normal, he advised. Don't let them know you're suspicious. We need more evidence before we can make any arrests. I forced my fingers to type. Tell her not to worry about it. I'm just glad she's okay, but inside, I was seething. Sophia felt terrible? She was the one who had tried to poison me, and now she was playing the sympathetic victim. Detective, I said quietly, what happens now? Do I just wait for them to try again? We're going to set up surveillance, he replied. We'll monitor your house, track their movements. But Mrs. Morrison, you need to understand this is going to be dangerous. If they realize we're onto them, they might accelerate their timeline, meaning they might try a more direct approach next time. Something that doesn't look like an accident. A chill ran down my spine. How long do you think we have? Not long, he said. They'll want to move quickly now that their first attempt failed especially. If they suspect you're getting suspicious, as if on cue, my phone rang. Robert's name lit up the screen. It's him, I whispered. Answer it, Detective Williams said. Act normal. I took a deep breath and answered. Hello, Robert, Diana, he said smoothly. I heard about what happened at your party. How terrible for poor Sophia. His voice was calm, comforting. Practiced the same tone he'd used years ago when lying to me about working late. Yes, I said, keeping my tone steady. It was quite frightening. But I managed. I was wondering if I could take you to lunch tomorrow, he said. I know we don't talk much anymore. But this whole situation has me thinking about family, about how important it is that we all support each other across the table. Detective Williams was motioning emphatically. Say yes, that would be nice, I said finally. Wonderful, Robert replied. How about that little place in Malibu you always liked? Sunset overlooking the ocean. After I hung up, Detective Williams was already scribbling notes. Perfect. We'll wire you for the conversation and have units positioned nearby. This could be the break we need. You think he'll confess? I asked. I think he'll say something incriminating, Williams said. Criminals always do when they think they're in control, but as I drove home that evening, that assurance gave me little comfort. Deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that Robert and Sophia were the ones truly in control. They'd been planning this for years, while I'd been living in blissful ignorance, trusting my husband, welcoming my daughter-in-law into the family, never seeing the danger right in front of me. How many clues had I missed? How many subtle glances, quiet conversations, or small lies that should have warned me? When I pulled into my driveway, I sat in the car staring at my house, my sanctuary. The home where I thought I'd finally be safe, where I planned to spend my newfound freedom. But freedom, I realized, was an illusion when the people you loved were plotting your death. My phone buzzed again. A new text from an unknown number. Enjoyed our conversation today. Don't trust anyone. Even the police can be bought. Watch your back. Carmen's warning hit me like a punch to the gut. If she was right, if Robert and Sophia had connections inside law enforcement, then even Detective Williams might not be safe to trust. For the first time, I realized I was completely on my own. The restaurant Robert had chosen was one we used to visit, often perched high on a cliff, overlooking the Pacific. The irony wasn't lost on me. He'd picked the same spot where we'd celebrated our anniversary for 15 years. To discuss my murder, I arrived early, wearing the wire Detective Williams had given me, trying to appear calm despite the thundering of my heart. The device was tiny, hidden beneath my blouse, but it felt enormous, like a glowing sign announcing my secret. Robert walked in precisely on time, looking as polished as ever. His silver hair gleamed, his tailored suit impeccable. He was tall, confident, still every bit the charming man I'd once loved for 28 years. I'd thought I was lucky to be married to him. Now I knew better. Diana, he said warmly, kissing my cheek like the devoted ex-husband. How are you holding up after that terrible incident? Robert asked, his voice full of concern that didn't reach his eyes. It was quite a shock, I replied, settling into the booth across from him. Poor Sophia. Who would do such a thing? Robert's eyes sharpened slightly. Have the police found any leads? Detective Williams seems capable. He's been asking a lot of questions. What kind of questions? I asked carefully. Detective Williams had coached me on how to draw information without sounding suspicious. Oh, you know, I said casually, who had access to the drinks? Who might have had conflicts with Sophia? He even asked about our divorce. Can you believe that? As if our personal issues had anything to do with what happened to her. Robert visibly relaxed. Cops always look at family first. It's standard procedure. He asked about you specifically, I added. Actually wanted to know about your relationship with Sophia. My relationship with her? Robert's tone was casual, but I caught a flicker of something in his eyes. She's my daughter-in-law. We get along fine. That's what I told him, I said. Though I did mention how enthusiastic you were about Marcus's engagement. Remember how quickly you welcomed her into the family? She made Marcus happy. That's all that mattered to me, but I noticed his hand tighten around his water glass. I knew I was hitting the right nerve. It's funny, I continued smoothly. Detective Williams said the strangest thing. He wondered if Sophia might not have been the intended victim at all. What if someone was trying to poison me and she got my drink by mistake? The color drained from Robert's face so quickly that I almost felt sorry for him, almost. That's ridiculous, he said, but his voice was tight. Who would want to hurt you? I've been wondering about that, I said softly. I mean, if someone wanted me dead, the divorce settlement would be the obvious motive, wouldn't it? 50% of our assets, that's worth killing for. Diana, you're being paranoid, am I? Because when I think about it, Robert, our divorce was surprisingly smooth. You didn't fight the settlement at all. That's not like you. You've never been one to give up money easily. I felt guilty about the affairs, he said flatly. Did you? Or did you know the money would come back to you eventually? Robert stared at me now, the fake charm gone. What are you implying? I'm not implying anything, I said evenly. I'm saying it outright. You and Sophia have been planning to kill me. Silence stretched between us like a taut wire. The charming mask he'd worn for years had completely slipped. I was looking at the face of a stranger, a cold, calculating man who'd shared my bed for nearly 3 decades. You're delusional, he said finally. Carmen Rodriguez might disagree. That got a reaction. Robert's eyes went wide and his hand knocked over his water glass. Ice and water spilled across the table, but neither of us moved. I don't know who that is, he muttered. David Watson's sister, I said. Remember David? One of your previous victims in Colorado. I've never heard of anyone named David Watson, really? I leaned in. Because Carmen has photographs of you with Sophia in Chicago. She has police reports from 3 different cities. She has documented evidence of a pattern spanning multiple years. Robert's breathing quickened. His composure was crumbling. Even if any of that were true, which it isn't, you have no proof of anything. Sophia was poisoned, not you. She's the victim here. Sophia was poisoned because I switched our glasses, I said. I saw her put something in my drink, Robert. I watched her try to murder me at my own birthday party. You're lying. The detective has the whole thing on my home security footage, I said. Amazing what those doorbell cameras pick up these days. That was a bluff. I didn't actually have any cameras inside my house, but Robert didn't know that. He leaned across the table, lowering his voice. You have no idea what you're dealing with, Diana. This is bigger than just me and Sophia. If you think you can expose us and walk away, you're even more naive than I thought. Are you threatening me? I'm warning you, he said coldly. Drop this investigation. Tell the police you were mistaken about what you saw. Say Sophia was the victim of a random poisoning and move on with your life. And if I don't, Robert's smile was colder than anything I'd ever seen. Then you won't live long enough to regret it. He stood up, threw a few bills on the table, and walked away, leaving behind a trail of melting ice and the unmistakable scent of danger. Enjoy your lunch. Diana, it might be your last meal. After he left, I sat in the booth for several minutes, shaking. The wire had captured every word. But Robert's final threat made it clear that evidence alone wouldn't keep me safe. I called Detective Williams from the parking lot. How much of that did you get? I asked. Every word, he said. That was perfect. Mrs. Morrison, he essentially confessed to conspiracy to commit murder. He also threatened to kill me if I don't back off. I said quietly, which is exactly why we're moving to phase 2 of our plan tonight. Phase 2? We're going to arrest Sophia and see what she says once she realizes her partner just threw her under the bus. People like this don't have loyalty. They'll turn on anyone to save themselves. I thought about Sophia's beautiful smile, her practiced charm, the way she'd handed me my poison drink with such innocent concern. Be careful, detective, I warned. She's more dangerous than she looks. Don't worry, he said. We know what we're dealing with. But as I drove home, I couldn't shake the feeling that none of us really knew what we were dealing with. Robert had said this was bigger than just him and Sophia. What if Carmen had been right about corruption in law enforcement? What if Detective Williams himself couldn't be trusted? For the first time since this nightmare began, I realized I might be completely alone in fighting for my life. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Mom, something weird is happening. Sophia just got a call that upset her and now she's insisting we come home immediately. She won't tell me why. I'm worried about her. I typed back quickly, stay where you are. Don't come home until I tell you it's safe. But I was already too late. Marcus's next message made my blood run cold. Too late, we're already in the car. Should be there in 2 hours. Sophia was coming back to finish what she'd started. I had 2 hours to prepare for what might be my final confrontation with a killer. The smart thing would have been to leave to find a public place. Wait for Detective Williams to make his arrest, but if I ran now, Sophia would know I was on to her. She'd disappear before the police could catch her. Besides, I was done running from my own life. Instead, I spent those 2 hours setting traps. I hid a backup recording device in the living room, activated the emergency alert on my phone so I could call for help with one touch, and checked every door and window twice. If Sophia wanted to finish the job, she'd have to work for it. When I heard Marcus's car pull into the driveway, I positioned myself in the kitchen, clear view of both exits, and close to the knife block, just in case. Marcus came through the front door, calling my name with Sophia right behind him. She looked pale and nervous, her usual composure cracked around the edges. Mom, are you okay? Marcus asked, wrapping me in a hug. Sophia was worried about you after what happened at the party. How thoughtful of her, I said, meeting Sophia's eyes over his shoulder. I'm fine, sweetheart. Though I have to admit, the whole situation has me a bit on edge. Of course it does, Sophia said, stepping forward with that same rehearsed sympathy. It must have been so frightening to see someone get poisoned at your own party. Terrifying. I agreed evenly. I keep wondering who could have done such a thing and why. The police will figure it out, Marcus said confidently. Detective Williams seemed sharp. Sophia's expression flickered at the mention of his name. Has he learned anything new? A few things, I said carefully. He seems to think the poison was meant for someone else. Someone else? Marcus asked, confused. But Sophia was the one who got sick. That's what's so puzzling, I replied. Detective Williams thinks maybe the killer made a mistake, somehow poisoned the wrong glass. I watched Sophia's face closely. Her eyes had gone very still. I could almost see her mind working, calculating how much I knew. That seems unlikely. She said slowly. I mean, how would someone even mix up glasses? Well, I said softly. The detective thinks maybe the intended victim was smart enough to switch drinks. When they realized what was happening, the silence that followed was deafening. Marcus glanced between us, sensing the tension but not understanding it. Mom, he said hesitantly. Are you saying someone was trying to poison you? It's possible, I said, never taking my eyes off Sophia. The question is, I said evenly, who would want to hurt me and why? Sophia's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and the color drained from her face. Marcus, she said suddenly, her voice trembling. I'm feeling dizzy again. Could you get me some water from the car? I left a bottle on the front seat, of course. Marcus immediately hurried toward the door, ever the devoted husband, rushing to help his wife. The moment he stepped outside, Sophia's entire demeanor changed. The sweet, concerned daughter-in-law vanished, replaced by something cold and calculating. How much do you know? She asked, her voice like ice. Everything, I said. Chicago, Denver, David Watson, your partnership with Robert, all of it. She tilted her head slightly, a faint smirk forming. Then you know you're in serious trouble, am I? Because from where I'm standing, you're the one who nearly died from your own poison. Not exactly the mark of a successful killer. Sophia's smile sharpened into something predatory. That was careless of me, she said. But don't worry, I won't make the same mistake twice. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small vial filled with clear liquid. What's that? I asked, though I already knew. Something much faster than antifreeze, she replied coolly. You'll have a heart attack, Diana, very sudden. Very believable for a woman your age dealing with the stress of divorce and family drama. Marcus will be back any second. He'll find his mother collapsed in the kitchen, and his wife desperately trying to perform CPR. I'll be the grieving daughter-in-law traumatized by losing another family member so soon after my own poisoning. I backed toward the knife block, my pulse thundering. But Sophia was faster. She grabbed a kitchen towel and poured the contents of the vial over it. One breath, she said, advancing on me. That's all it takes. The police know about you, I said quickly, trying to stall her. They're on their way here. She smiled a cold, cruel smile. Are they? Because Robert sent me a very interesting text a few minutes ago. Apparently, Detective Williams had a car accident this afternoon. Terrible tragedy. He was the only one investigating my case. My heart sank. Carmen had been right, there was corruption in law enforcement. You can't kill everyone who knows the truth, I said. I don't have to, Sophia replied calmly. I just have to kill the ones who matter. Then she lunged, but I was ready. I grabbed the largest knife from the block and swung hard, slashing across her wrist. Sophia screamed and dropped the towel, the clear liquid splattering across my kitchen floor. You bitch, she snarled, clutching her bleeding wrist. That's right, I said, keeping the knife between us. This bitch figured out your game. The front door burst open. Marcus rushed in, eyes wide. What the hell? He froze, taking in the scene, his wife bleeding and cursing, me holding a knife, and a sharp chemical smell filling the air. Mom, what's happening? He demanded. Your wife just tried to murder me, I said steadily. Just like she murdered 3 other people before she met you. That's insane, Sophia cried, instantly slipping back into victim mode. Marcus, your mother attacked me. I think she's having some kind of breakdown. But Marcus wasn't listening to her anymore. His eyes darted to the spilled liquid on the floor, the vial rolling under the counter, his wife's bleeding wrist. Sophia, he said slowly. What's in that bottle? For the first time since I'd known her, Sophia didn't have an answer. That's when I heard the sirens. The police cars that pulled into my driveway weren't from the Beverly Hills department. These were FBI vehicles. The lead investigator, a sharp-eyed woman named Agent Sarah Chen, stepped inside. She looked like someone who'd seen everything and wasn't impressed by much. "Mrs. Morrison," she said, "we understand you've been conducting your own investigation into what happened at your birthday party." I said. Detective Williams is fine," Agent Chen interrupted. "The car accident was staged to make your suspects think their plan was working. He's been working with us for the past week." I felt my knees weaken with relief. "So, you know about Robert and Sophia?" Agent Chen nodded. "We've been tracking this operation for 2 years. Your case was the break we needed to move in while paramedics treated Sophia's wrist." Agent Chen explained that the FBI had been investigating a network of inheritance murderers. Operating across multiple states, they'd identified at least 12 victims over the past 5 years, wealthy people who had all died in suspicious circumstances. Soon after marrying much younger partners, Robert Morrison was the mastermind, Agent Chen explained. He used his financial consulting business to find wealthy, vulnerable targets, then introduced them to women like Sophia, specialists in long-term seduction and murder. "How many women like Sophia are there?" I asked. "We've identified 6 so far," she said. "They call themselves the inheritors. Professionals who marry rich partners and arrange their deaths to look like accidents or natural causes." Marcus had gone completely silent during the explanation. He sat on my couch, head in his hands, barely breathing. When Agent Chen finished, he finally looked up, his eyes full of pain and disbelief. "How long?" he asked quietly. "How long was she planning to kill my mother according to our surveillance?" Agent Chen said gently. "The plan was in motion before she even met you. We believe your father specifically arranged your introduction to Sophia as part of a long-term strategy." Marcus blinked, stunned. "My father set me up with my own wife so she could murder my mother and eventually me to dead sons. Can't contest inheritances or ask uncomfortable questions," Agent Chen added softly. Marcus made a sound like he'd been punched in the stomach. I sat beside him and wrapped my arm around my son, the man who'd unknowingly married a serial killer. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," I whispered. "I know this is devastating." "I loved her," he said hoarsely. "I thought she loved me," from across the room. Sophia laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that froze everyone. "Love?" she sneered. Her sweet facade gone completely. "Marcus, you were so easy to manipulate, it was almost boring. Do you have any idea how tedious it was pretending to care about your little hobbies? Your boring friends, your pathetic attempts at romance." "Sophia, stop," I said sharply. But she wasn't finished. "And you," she continued, turning to me. "Sitting there so proud of yourself for figuring out my plan. You have no idea how close you came to dying. If you hadn't gotten lucky with that glass switch, you'd be dead right now. And Marcus would be comforting me through my grief while I slowly poisoned him, too." Agent Chen stepped forward. "Sophia Williams, you're under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and fraud," as the agents led her away in handcuffs. Sophia turned back toward me one last time. "This isn't over, Diana," she said coldly. "We have people everywhere. You'll never be safe." "Actually," Agent Chen replied calmly, "it is over. We arrested 6 other members of your network this morning, including Robert Morrison. Your entire operation is finished." After the FBI left with Sophia, Marcus and I sat in silence in the living room, trying to process everything that had just happened. "I need to know," he said finally. "Did you suspect her before the party? Did you know she was dangerous?" I thought back over the last 2 years, Sophia's carefully polished charm, her vague stories about her past, the way she watched people like she was calculating their worth. I knew something was off, I admitted, but I never imagined anything like this. I thought she was just young and self-centered, not a professional killer. "She said she was going to kill me too," Marcus murmured, "but she didn't." "You're safe now," I said softly, "and she's going to prison for the rest of her life." He stared at his wedding ring for a long time, then slowly slipped it off and set it on the coffee table. "I don't think I'll ever trust anyone again," he said quietly. "Don't say that. What happened to us was extraordinary, not normal. Most people aren't sociopathic murderers. How do you tell the difference?" he asked. "How do you know who to trust?" It was a question I'd been asking myself since this nightmare began. "You trust carefully," I said. "You listen to your instincts when something feels wrong. You pay attention to inconsistencies. You ask questions." "My instincts told me Sophia was perfect for me," he said bitterly. "Your instincts were being manipulated by a professional con artist," I told him gently. "That's not your fault, Marcus. That's what people like her do. They're experts at making you see what they want you to see." My phone buzzed with a new text from Agent Chen. "Robert Morrison is cooperating fully. He's given us information about victims in 8 states and is helping us locate the remaining women in the network. Justice is coming for all of them." I showed the message to Marcus. Your father is going to spend the rest of his life in prison, I said. But at least he's helping to stop other families from suffering what we went through. Do you hate him? Marcus asked quietly. For everything he did to us. I thought about it for a moment. Robert had been planning my death for years, pretending to love me while arranging my murder. He'd set up his own son to marry a killer. He'd built a criminal empire around murdering innocent people for profit. I hate what he did, I said finally, but mostly, I feel sad for him. Imagine being so empty inside that money matters more than the people who love you. As the sun set over Malibu, Marcus and I ordered takeout and spent the evening flipping through old photo albums, trying to figure out which memories were real and which had been poisoned by Sophia's lies. It would take time to heal from that kind of betrayal, but we would heal. We'd survived something extraordinary, and we'd done it together for the first time in months. I felt truly safe in my own home. 3 months later, I sat in a federal courtroom as Sophia Williams was sentenced to 6 consecutive life terms, with no possibility of parole. Agent Chen had been right, the operation's reach was enormous. The final count was 15 confirmed murders across 8 states, with at least a dozen more under investigation. Robert received life plus 40 years during his sentencing. He looked directly at me and Marcus sitting in the gallery. Neither of us looked back. Some bridges, once burned, should stay that way. The media dubbed them the inheritance killers, and the story became a national warning about trusting people too quickly. I gave several interviews not for attention, but to help other potential victims spot the warning signs. It also helped me process everything that had happened. How did you know to switch the glasses? A reporter from 60 Minutes asked me once. I didn't know for sure, I replied. But when you've lived as long as I have, you learn to trust your instincts. The key is listening when something feels wrong instead of dismissing it. Marcus had moved back into my Malibu home temporarily while he figured out his next steps. The betrayal had shattered his confidence, but slowly, day by day, he was rebuilding himself. I got a job offer, he told me one morning over breakfast, a consulting firm in Seattle. It'd be a fresh start somewhere without any memories of her. That sounds perfect, I said. When would you start? Next month. But moms, I worry about leaving you alone. Sweetheart, I'm not alone, I smiled. I have Jennifer, my book club, and an entire life here. Besides, I think I've proven I can take care of myself. He laughed, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him since the arrest. You certainly did. Remind me never to get on your bad side. Just don't try to poison me. And we'll be fine, I teased. We were learning to joke about it now, and that felt like progress. That afternoon, I met Carmen Rodriguez for lunch. She'd flown in from Chicago for Sophia's sentencing. She testified about her brother's murder and finally found the closure she'd been searching for. How are you adjusting to normal life? She asked. It's surprisingly difficult, I admitted. For months, I was focused on survival, on gathering evidence and staying ahead of people who wanted me dead. Now that it's over, I don't quite know what to do with myself. Have you thought about writing a book? Your story could help people, actually. I have been writing, I said, handing her a printout. Not a book exactly, but see for yourself. She read through the pages. My new project, a detailed guide on recognizing and avoiding inheritance predators, complete with warning signs and safety protocols. This is brilliant, Carmen said. You should get this to every divorce attorney, estate planner, and financial advisor in the country. I've been thinking about starting a foundation, I told her. Something to help families targeted by these kinds of criminals. The Diana Morrison Foundation for Inheritance Security, something like that. Maybe we can stop other families from going through what mine did. As we talked, I realized something profound. Surviving Robert and Sophia's murder plot hadn't just saved my life. It had given me a new purpose. It had given me a purpose I'd never had before. For the first time since my divorce, I felt genuinely energized about the future. When I got home that evening, Marcus was in the kitchen making dinner, actually cooking, not just ordering takeout. It was another sign that he was healing. How was your lunch with Carmen? He asked. Inspiring, I said with a smile. I've decided to start a foundation to help other inheritance crime victims. That's amazing, Mom. Marcus said, his face lighting up. Dad and Sophia tried to destroy us, but instead you're turning everything they did into something that helps people. It feels like the right thing to do, I said softly. Like maybe there was a reason I survived when their other victims didn't. Marcus stirred the pasta sauce quietly for a moment. I've been thinking about that too, he said. About why we got lucky when so many others didn't. And what conclusion did you reach? I asked. That you're tougher than you look, he said with a small grin. And that I must have inherited at least some of that toughness from you. After dinner, we sat out on the terrace watching the sun dip below the Pacific, the same view where this nightmare had started 6 months earlier. But now, everything felt different. Do you ever regret not running when you first realized what was happening? Marcus asked. Never, I said firmly. Running would have meant letting them win. It would have meant living in fear, always looking over my shoulder, never knowing when they might try again. Weren't you terrified? Absolutely, I admitted. But being scared and being defeated are two different things. I decided I'd rather die fighting than live hiding, he laughed. You sound like a character from one of those action movies. Real life is stranger than fiction, I said with a wink. Besides, your mother has hidden depths. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the waves crash against the rocks below. Tomorrow, I would start making calls about the foundation. Next week, Marcus would start his new job in Seattle. Next month, we'd both be living completely different lives than we'd planned a year ago, but we'd be living them freely, safely, and on our own terms. As the stars came out over Malibu, I raised my wine glass in a silent toast to all the inheritance crime victims who hadn't been as lucky as I was. Their deaths wouldn't be forgotten, and if I had anything to say about it, their killers' methods would never work again. Sophia Williams might have thought she was hunting an easy target when she set her sights on my family. She'd picked the wrong woman to mess with. 1 year after that birthday party from hell, I stood in a conference room in Washington, D.C., addressing a joint session of congressional committees about inheritance crime prevention. The Diana Morrison Foundation had grown beyond my wildest expectations, helping law enforcement identify and arrest 12 more members of similar criminal networks. The key, I told the assembled senators and representatives, is understanding that these criminals don't look like criminals. They look like charming young people who've fallen in love with wealthy older individuals. They're articulate, well-dressed, and extremely skilled at emotional manipulation. After my testimony, Senator Patricia Walsh approached me. Mrs. Morrison, she said warmly, your foundation has prevented an estimated 23 murders in the past year. How does that feel? Gratifying, I said, but also heartbreaking because it means there were 23 families who could have gone through what mine did. What's next for your foundation? She asked. International cooperation, I replied. These networks operate across borders. We need to share intelligence with law enforcement in other countries. That evening, I had dinner with Agent Chen, who had become one of my closest friends over the past year. Any word on the other cases? I asked. 3 more convictions last month, she said. The woman who called herself Elena in Miami got life without parole for murdering 4 men in Florida. And we finally tracked down Catherine from the Portland operation. She'd moved to London and was already targeting her next victim. How many total victims do we think there were? I asked quietly. At least 47 confirmed murders, Chen said. Probably more. Your case broke open the largest inheritance murder network in U.S. history. I thought about all those families who'd lost loved ones to predators like Sophia and Robert. At least their deaths had led to justice and to prevention for future victims. Your foundation's screening protocols are being adopted by financial institutions nationwide, Chen added with a proud smile. When I returned to Malibu the next day, Marcus was waiting for me in the kitchen, his expression bright and full of excitement. He'd gotten engaged to a wonderful woman named Sarah Chen, Agent Chen's younger sister. She's nothing like Sophia, he assured me. Sarah had been an FBI analyst for 8 years, with a completely verifiable background, and Agent Chen herself vouched for her character. Plus, I added with a smile, if she ever tries to poison me, her sister will arrest her. Marcus laughed. That too. The wedding was small and intimate, held in my backyard with the Pacific Ocean glimmering in the background. As I watched Marcus exchange vows with Sarah, I couldn't help but notice how different the ceremony felt from his first wedding. There was no pretense, no performance, just pure, genuine love and happiness shining in Sarah's eyes. During the reception, Jennifer pulled me aside. Look at you, she said. A year ago, you were hiding from a serial killer. Now you're running a foundation, testifying before Congress, and your son is happily remarried. How do you feel? Like I finally know who I really am, I told her. For 28 years, I defined myself as Robert's wife. For 2 years after that, I was just the divorced woman trying to figure out what came next, but surviving. What Sophia and Robert did, that showed me what I'm truly made of. And what are you made of? She asked. Apparently tougher stuff than anyone expected, including me. As the evening wound down and the last guest left, Marcus and Sarah came over to thank me for hosting their wedding. Mom, Marcus said, I know this past year has been incredibly hard, but I want you to know how much you've done, the way you fought for our family. The foundation you built. Dad and Sophia tried to destroy us, but instead, you turned their attack into something that's already saved dozens of lives. They made one crucial mistake, I said. What's that? He asked. They underestimated their target. They saw a recently divorced 58-year-old woman and thought I'd be easy prey. What they didn't realize is that I'd spent 3 decades married to a manipulative man, which taught me exactly how to recognize lies and fight back. Sarah laughed. Note to self, never mess with Diana Morrison, smart woman, I said with a grin. I can see why Marcus fell for you. Later that night, I stood alone on my terrace, gazing out at the dark waves rolling beneath the moonlight. Somewhere out there, Sophia Williams was serving the first of many years in federal prison. Robert was in a different facility, probably still trying to manipulate his way into a better situation. But me, I was here, free, alive, and stronger than ever. My phone buzzed with a text from Agent Chen. Just wanted you to know. We arrested another inheritance killer today using your foundation's protocols. A 24-year-old woman in Tampa was planning to murder her 67-year-old husband next week. His family got suspicious and called your hotline. You saved another life today. I smiled and typed back, that's what we're here for. As I headed inside for bed, I caught my reflection in the sliding glass door. The woman looking back wasn't afraid anymore. She was confident, purposeful, and unshakably strong. Sophia Williams had once tried to poison me at my own birthday party, but instead of ending my life, she'd given me the most powerful gift imaginable, the knowledge of how strong I really was. And that strength, I'd be using it to protect others for the rest of my life. Some people survive trauma, others transform it into purpose. I'd done both, and I'd never been prouder of who I'd become. The Diana Morrison who'd been married to Robert for 28 years might have been a victim once, but the Diana Morrison who'd switched those glasses and outsmarted a serial killer, she was nobody's victim. She was a warrior, and she was just getting started. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.